Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we are finally going to be talking about the long-awaited solo album from David Byrne called American Utopia. So I've talked a little bit before about legacy acts, artists who are a fundamental part of the evolution of a specific genre or sound, and who probably won a certain amount of popular and critical acclaim for that period, and often whatever the hell they chose to do next, often with a measure of clout and collaborative pull that few else could ever approach. But let's ask an uncomfortable question. What do you do with said acts when the legacy starts to get re-examined or unraveling? Or you come to the realization that while the Emperor probably still has some clothes left, it's a fair bit less than one might otherwise expect. And yes, I get that by me making that statement, even in the same review with David Byrne, I've set myself up for a nice fun backlash in the comments below, but it's hard not to feel like in recent years the critical narrative has shifted somewhat. His reputation as the mastermind behind the Talking Heads has shown more than a few holes in the past couple of years, a reputation that many have suspected he achieved in his heyday by stifling other voices in the band. And while his work with Brian Eno won him a lot of critical acclaim at the time, many have questioned how influential those experimental electronic pieces really were. Even his film scores, one of which netted him an Academy Award. While the quality is often appreciated in the 1980s, and I'll admit that, there's a lot of good stuff there, it gets a lot less listenable when you head into the 90s, or parts of the 2000s. I'm just being honest there, I went back through all of it, and yeah, it's the case. And look, as a fiercely intelligent personality in modern culture and music, I really like David Byrne. But the more I delved into his content and his themes, the more I found myself questioning how much perceptive depth has really been on the table this whole time. I mean, I like self-obsessed deconstructions and wry observations as much as any critic. I mean, look at me. But just being more clever than everybody else often doesn't add up to a lot more, with his most glaring instance of this being his collaboration with St. Vincent, Love This Giant. A very stiff and absolutely frustrating affair where two artists who have enough similarities to challenge each other thematically and are yet content with mirrored stiffness. I really was not a fan of that album. And thus when I say I was somewhat skeptical about his newest project, American Utopia, a project that David Byrne admits was searching more for some abstract, uplifting feeling or possibilities than engage with the reality of the situation to offer more of a shred of hope, well, to me it wasn't a bad idea, and he brought on board Brian Eno, Sampha, and One-Tricks Point Never in order to help, so I had some faith this could at least be interesting over 10 tracks running less than 40 minutes, so alright, what the hell? What do you give us on American Utopia? Oh god, I feel I should be way less charitable than I think I'll wind up being to this project. And that's not normally something I would say, because for as terminally flawed as this project is, and make no mistake, for as much as David Byrne is hyping this, the shortcomings on this project are as blatantly obvious as they've ever been with David Byrne. There's still a part of me that really wants to try and find some excuse for David Byrne, or at least assume there's more depth than there actually is. And as such, I've been giving this record entirely more listens than so many others on my list, trying to find some of that deeper resonance, proof that there is some goodness here. And look, a lot of it's just not there. Mingled snippets of gleaming promise, but entirely too many wonky, badly considered choices and lyrics that I would have crucified a lesser artist a dozen times over for. In other words, yeah, it's not really bad, but it's not really good either. Now granted, some of my desire to be charitable comes in the collaborators. David Byrne is bringing a lot of good quality here, especially in the production. Both Brian Eno and Rondé McDonald are really damn good producers, able to modulate the fizzy brittleness of much of the percussion with the prominent bass grooves, the damp guitar progressions, the arranged strings, and even some firmer horns that show up on songs like Gasoline and Dirty Sheets and Everybody's Coming to My House. All with an organic fullness and depth that doesn't really have much of an edge, but it doesn't need to with this content. And it still packs a punch in the melodic groove. And whenever One-Tricks Point Never contributes more brittle, shuddering keys and beats that show something that's a little bit more ragged and twisted on songs like This Is That, while I won't say that they have the same immediate catchiness, they do reflect a more experimental side to this project that would inspire somebody like me to think that there is more going on than there actually is. But if I take more issues, I think they come in the compositional choices, and that primarily lands on Byrne. From the flat guitar melody on It's Not Dark Up Here that I liked a lot more when Sparks Brooks and Franz Ferdinand took similar tones, to the limp keyboards on Bullet that are then paired with acoustic guitars that utterly fail to cultivate any sense of deeper atmosphere, with the oddly languid tropical tone that also shows up on Every Day is a Miracle. Or if you want the most blatant example of tonal dissonance, look at the opening song I Dance Like This, where for the hook, David Byrne shifts from more elegant keys into a jagged, pulsating and staccato electronic beat that doesn't fit any sort of transition at all. It's really quite awkward. Now granted, some of this problem also comes with David Byrne himself. And you know what? Again, I will give him credit for clearly throwing himself into these tunes with a slightly haggard but full-throated, earnest delivery that only gets slightly cringeworthy when you hear his falsetto that has never been his strongest suit. And it makes you wish that Sampha could have contributed more vocals besides just background on Everyone's Coming to My House. Kind of a waste there. You could have had more of him. But alright, now we have to get to the actual content. And you know what? For as much as I feel like utopian themes can feel a little bit out of touch with reality when it comes to speaking a modern audience, especially nowadays, you know what? I get escapism. I get aspirations for something a little bit more and something better to give that message of hope. And yet, why is the first record I think of when listening through American Utopia is Common's fateful Black America Again from 2016, released with the clear expectation of a different election outcome in the States, and now feels woefully out of step? But that's the frustrating thing about David Byrne releasing a record in this vein. He's clearly trying to take his immersion in normalcy and his natural detachment from the rest of the world and find some vestige of freedom in the open question of what things could be. But it's a position that's taken when you don't really have any real stakes to worry about and aren't really willing to engage in the deeper, less comfortable questions that are lurking beneath the surface, and sometimes this record skates right up to. Take Doing the Right Thing, where he's asking questions of the comfortable and profitable routine that he has, and whether what's right by that is actually good. It's clear that he wants to help and take action, but there's no sense of urgency, and then you get lyrics like, "And the world won't end, it'll just change its name," which is an easy pseudo-profound thing to say when you're not going to be seriously inconvenienced by any real change. And it's a similar case for I Dance Like This, which tries to own up to its jittery actions, which kind of makes sense coming from David Byrne, but only seems half aware that it's not always an option for those people he describes in the first two verses of the song, and lacks even a sense of indignity or urgency to change it. I'll admit that David Byrne feels more earnest and sincere than Portugal the Man saying he's a rebel just for kicks, but him belting the hook on Every Day is a Miracle to just love one another, I'm sorry, it feels pretty damn trite. But now we have to get to the actual elephant in the room, the lyrics themselves. And I get it, there's always been an element of creative abstraction and metaphor, and a choice to indulge in a slightly lighter, more hopeful tone means you are allowed to get a little bit sillier. But I'm sorry, if we had Pat Monahan from Train delivering these lines instead of David Byrne, he would not be getting nearly the same pass from a lot of people. Quote, "The brain of a chicken and the dick of a donkey, a pig in a blanket, and that's why you want me." I mean, I get the self-deprecating metaphor targeting intelligence, sexual appetites, and privilege, and how the usage of animal references in that song, specifically cockroaches, highlight a certain Kafka-esque system that even observant humans can't possibly fully understand. But at best it sounds really friggin' goofy, and at worst trivializing in a really unflattering way. Even when a few lines later he says how the mind is a soft-boiled potato. Seriously. And similar metaphors extend to Dog's Mind, highlighting how dogs are fundamentally limited in their concerns of this life just as we humans are in our own way, and we can choose to embrace a certain paradise in our minds. But there are two major problems with that. First of all, the song includes the line of the hook, "Doggy dancers doing duty." Yeah, seriously, there's a poop joke. And secondly, extends the fundamental assumptions that we don't or can't understand the larger systems around a scene of rampant disinformation perpetuated by those in power right now. And that's just not true in the same way anymore. We can see through the lies, especially in the era of the internet. David Byrne, he has always had an abstract fascination with those systems of larger human behavior in society, and that can add to the slightest bit of panic to a song like Everybody's Coming to My House. But it's the same detachment when he chooses not to give a name to the woman in Gasoline and Dirty Streets, who utterly rejects his trite, free your mind platitudes all over the rest of the album, and winds up being the best song here as a result. I'm not sure if the self-awareness is accidental, but it kind of feels like it was. Or on a much worse note, how he focuses much more on the Bullet's clinical progression on the song Bullet rather than the man shot dead. And for a record that's trying so damn hard to feel socially aware, it's a complete failure in tone and lyrical execution and really in bad taste. But look, As I said in the beginning, I like and respect David Byrne for his ambition and clearly trying to make an optimistic, positive statement with this project. But the more listens I gave it, the more this statement felt trite, incoherent, or out of touch at best, and myopic or dangerously misguided at worst. I mean, there's good intentions, I like that, sure, and there are some good grooves, hooks, and production order to back some of it up, but nowhere close to consistent across the board, and entirely too many failures in lyrical execution to be better. In short, it's the brand of utopian dreaming that comes from a multi-millionaire artist firmly ensconced inside that system that he would rather comment upon it than actively challenge or change it. And if the writing and increasingly broad presentation wasn't trying to frame it as a profound version of trying to challenge or change, I'd probably be a lot more charitable overall. But I'm sorry, for me this is a 5 out of 10, only a recommendation to diehard fans, and even then, it's a serious step down from earlier solo projects or anything he did with the Talking Heads. Apparently he still throws a fantastic live show. I respect the hell out of that for a man at his age, but this project here, it should be a lot better than it is for a man as smart as he is, and I'm sorry, can't give it a pass. Probably would skip. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Folks, I really wanted this to be good, but I'm sorry, I can't get behind it. It doesn't click, and lyrically, it's got some really deep low points. But hey, if you want to buy the record, links in the description below. Got the poll up there for all you diehard fans to tell me I'm wrong. I'm looking forward to the comments, because again, I admit this will probably be a rather inflammatory opinion. I accepted that. I wish I could have liked it more. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation? I'm currently testing out some new stuff on my camera, so just heads up on that. Beyond that, if you guys want to get involved in my scheduling process or support this channel, link to my Patreon is right over there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once a week for the higher tier contributors, you guys get to add albums, movies, or even a top 10 list to that schedule. More details right over there, and if you want to see my schedule, links on my Instagram, which is also linked below. But till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.